The day Sharon Butterfield from the HOA showed up at my shop with a cease and desist letter was the same day I realized my peaceful life in suburban Connecticut was about to become a bureaucratic nightmare. I'm Yannick Quinlan, and I've been running Quinlan Heating and Cooling from my property in Fairfield County for the past 3 years. Actually, that's not entirely accurate. My grandfather started this business back in 1987, and when he passed away, he left me the property and the company. The building where I operate has been zoned for commercial use since 1982, 5 whole years before my grandfather even bought it. I have all the documentation to prove it. Mr. Quinlan, this business operation is in violation of our community standards, Sharon announced, standing in the doorway of my shop wearing a crisp pantsuit and holding a leather folder like it was the Constitution itself. She was probably in her mid-50s, with that particular haircut that seemed to be standard issue for HOA board presidents. You have 72 hours to cease all commercial activities on this property. I looked up from the furnace I was repairing for old Mrs. Patterson down the street. My hands were covered in grease, and I was in no mood for whatever this was about. I'm sorry, what? Who are you exactly? Sharon Butterfield, president of the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association. We sent you 3 notices already. I never got any notices. And since when is my property part of an HOA? I never signed anything. She pursed her lips in that way people do when they think they're about to deliver devastating news. The neighborhood was incorporated into the Meadowbrook Heights HOA last year. All properties within the designated boundaries are automatically included. It's perfectly legal. Even properties that have been commercially zoned for over 40 years. Your commercial license is irrelevant. Our covenants, conditions, and restrictions prohibit commercial operations within residential areas. The noise from your trucks, the customers coming and going, the commercial vehicles parked on site, it all violates our community standards. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up. I'm 6'2" and I could see Sharon take a small step backward. I wasn't trying to intimidate her. I just wanted to look her in the eye. Let me get this straight. You formed an HOA, decided my property is part of it without my consent, and now you're telling me I have to shut down a business that's been operating legally on this property since before I was born. The law is the law, Mr. Quinlan. You have 72 hours. After she left, I called my lawyer, Martin Jenkins. He'd handled my grandfather's estate and had always been straight with me. They can't do this, can they? I asked, pacing around my office. Let me look into it. Don't do anything rash. And definitely don't shut down your business until we figure this out. The next morning, I got a visit from 2 more HOA board members. Sharon had brought backup. One was a man named Douglas Pritchard, who introduced himself as the HOA treasurer. The other was a woman named Linda Kensington, the secretary. We're here to document violations, Douglas said, holding up his phone like he was some kind of official inspector. He started taking pictures of everything, my work vans, the business sign, even the dumpster where I threw away old parts. This is private property, I said. You can't just come in here and start taking pictures. Actually, according to HOA bylaws, board members have the right to inspect properties for compliance purposes, Linda said, consulting a tablet. She was younger than Sharon, maybe early 40s, but had the same officious attitude. Inspect residential properties, maybe. This is a commercial property. It has been for decades. Not according to our records, Douglas said. Our records show this entire area is residential. Then your records are wrong. We'll let the courts decide that, Sharon said, appearing from around the corner of my building. Apparently she'd been taking pictures of the back area too. We're filing for an immediate injunction to halt your business operations pending a hearing. Over the next week, things escalated fast. The HOA filed their injunction in civil court. Martin filed a counter-motion arguing that my commercial license predated their HOA rules and that I'd never agreed to join their association in the first place. We had a preliminary hearing scheduled for 2 weeks out. Meanwhile, the harassment continued. Sharon sent me daily emails documenting violations. My work trucks were too loud when they started in the morning. The smell of diesel fuel was offensive. Customers parking on the street created traffic issues. One email complained that my employee, Tony, had been seen smoking a cigarette outside the building, which violated their tobacco-free community initiative. "This is insane," Tony said when I told him about the smoking complaint. "I was on your property, in the designated smoking area. How is that their business?" Tony Rixai had worked for my grandfather for 15 years before working for me. He knew this business inside and out, and he'd seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood over the years. "It's not their business," I said. "They're just trying to make our lives miserable so we'll leave." "They picked the wrong guy to mess with," Tony said, lighting another cigarette. "Your grandfather dealt with the town trying to rezone this place back in the 90s. He won then, and you'll win now." I hoped he was right. The preliminary hearing was held in Fairfield County Superior Court. Martin had prepared a thick binder of documentation. The original commercial zoning certificate from 1982, my grandfather's business license from 1987, tax records showing the property had been taxed as commercial property for decades, and affidavits from longtime neighbors who confirmed the business had been operating continuously. The HOA brought their own lawyer, a slick guy named Robert Chen, who specialized in property law. He argued that zoning and HOA covenants were separate issues, that my commercial zoning didn't exempt me from their rules, and that I'd had adequate notice of the HOA formation and had failed to object within the required time frame. "Your Honor, Mr. Quinlan received multiple notices via certified mail," Chen said. "His failure to respond does not exempt him from compliance." "I never received any certified mail," I whispered to Martin. Martin stood up. "Your Honor, my client maintains he never received any such notices. We've checked with the post office, and there's no record of any certified mail being delivered to his address." Judge Patricia Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, looked over her reading glasses at Chen. "Counselor, do you have proof of delivery?" Chen shuffled through his papers. "We have proof that the notices were sent, Your Honor." "That's not what I asked. Do you have proof of delivery? Signatures, tracking confirmations. We'll need to check with the Postal Service, Your Honor." "You do that. In the meantime, I'm denying the injunction. Mr. Quinlan may continue his business operations pending a full hearing on the matter. We'll reconvene in 30 days. I felt a surge of relief, but Martin put a hand on my arm. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "This is just round one." He was right. The next day, Sharon filed a complaint with the town zoning board, claiming that my commercial license had lapsed and should be revoked. She also filed complaints with the State Environmental Agency about diesel fuel storage, with OSHA about workplace safety, and with the fire marshal about propane tank storage. "She's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks," Martin said when I called him in a panic. "Don't worry. We'll handle each complaint as it comes." But handling the complaints took time and money. The environmental agency sent an inspector who spent 3 hours going over my fuel storage setup. Thankfully, everything was up to code. The fire marshal did the same with my propane storage. Again, everything was fine. OSHA sent someone who found a few minor violations like a missing label on a chemical bottle and a first aid kit that needed restocking. I fixed everything immediately. The zoning board complaint was the serious one. Sharon was arguing that because I'd inherited the business rather than applying for a new license, my grandfather's commercial license didn't transfer to me automatically. She claimed I was operating without proper authorization. The zoning board hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday evening at the Fairfield Town Hall. I showed up with Martin and a box full of documents. The meeting room was packed. Sharon had mobilized the entire HOA, and at least 30 people were there to oppose me. I recognized a few faces from the neighborhood, but most were strangers. The zoning board consisted of 5 members. The chair was a man named George Patterson, no relation to Mrs. Patterson, whose furnace I'd been fixing. He was probably in his 70s, a retired civil engineer who'd lived in Fairfield his whole life. "We're here to address the complaint filed by the Meadowbrook Heights HOA regarding the commercial license for Quinlan Heating and Cooling," George said. "Mrs. Butterfield, you filed the complaint. Would you like to present your case?" Sharon stood up and walked to the podium. She'd prepared a whole presentation with a PowerPoint and everything. "Members of the board, thank you for your time. I'm here representing over 200 families in the Meadowbrook Heights community. For the past 3 years, we've endured noise pollution, traffic congestion, and decreased property values due to the commercial operation being run by Mr. Quinlan. When we discovered that his commercial license may not be valid, we felt it was our duty to bring this to your attention." She clicked through slides showing my work trucks, customers' cars parked on the street, and even a photo of Tony smoking outside. "This is a residential neighborhood. Our families deserve peace and quiet. Children play on these streets. Property values are at stake. Mr. Quinlan inherited a property, but that doesn't give him the right to run a commercial operation in violation of community standards." Several HOA members applauded. George banged his gavel. "This isn't a town hall meeting. Please hold your applause. Mr. Quinlan, would you like to respond?" I stood up, my legs shaky. I'd never been comfortable with public speaking, but Martin had coached me on what to say. "Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Yannick Quinlan. My grandfather, Robert Quinlan, bought this property in 1987 and operated Quinlan Heating and Cooling there for 30 years. When he passed away 3 years ago, I inherited both the property and the business. The property has been commercially zoned since 1982. My grandfather obtained all proper licenses and permits. When I took over, I updated all registrations with the state, obtained my contractor's licenses, and have maintained all required insurance and bonding." Martin handed me a document. "This is the original commercial zoning certificate from 1982. This is my grandfather's business license from 1987. This is my current business license, issued 3 years ago when I took over. This is my contractor's license from the state. Everything is in order and has been from the beginning." Sharon stood up again. "But the HOA covenants clearly state that commercial operations are prohibited." George held up his hand. "Mrs. Butterfield, we're not here to discuss HOA rules. We're here to determine whether Mr. Quinlan's commercial license is valid." "That's a zoning issue, not an HOA issue." "But surely the HOA rules have some bearing on this." "They don't. HOA covenants can't override existing commercial zoning. If a property was commercially zoned before the HOA existed, the HOA can't change that." I saw Sharon's face turn red. Douglas and Linda were whispering to each other furiously. George looked at the other board members. "I'd like to hear from our town clerk. Miss Rodriguez, can you confirm the zoning history of this property? A woman in her 30s stood up from the front row. "Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've reviewed the records. The property at 445 Meadowbrook Drive was rezoned from residential to commercial use in 1982. That zoning has never changed. Mr. Quinlan's business license is current and valid. All fees are paid, and there are no outstanding violations." "And when was the Meadowbrook Heights HOA formed?" "According to our records, the HOA was incorporated in 2023. So the commercial zoning predates the HOA by 41 years. "That's correct." George looked at his fellow board members. They had a quick, whispered conversation. Then he turned back to the microphone. "Based on the evidence presented, the zoning board finds that Mr. Quinlan's commercial license is valid and that his property is properly zoned for commercial use. The complaint is dismissed." Mrs. Butterfield, "While I understand your concerns, HOA rules cannot supersede existing commercial zoning. If you have issues with noise or traffic, those would be matters for the police or other town departments, not the zoning board." The HOA members erupted in angry muttering. Sharon looked like she wanted to argue more, but George banged his gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." As people filed out, Sharon pushed her way toward me. "This isn't over," she said. "We'll take this to Superior Court. We'll appeal to the state. You can't just ignore community standards." "I'm not ignoring anything," I said. "I'm running a legal business on legally zoned property. You're the one who can't accept that." Martin pulled me away before I could say anything else. "Don't engage," he said. "You won tonight, let's leave it at that." But Sharon wasn't done. The next week, I got a letter from the HOA's lawyer informing me that they were filing a lawsuit in Superior Court, seeking to force the town to rezone my property back to residential use. They were also suing me personally for diminished property values and seeking damages of $500,000. "Can they do that?" I asked Martin when we met in his office. "They can file whatever they want. Whether they'll win is another matter. The zoning board's decision is strong precedent, and their damages claim is laughable. They'd have to prove that your business specifically caused property values to drop, which is nearly impossible. This is going to cost me a fortune in legal fees. Probably. But you're in the right here. Don't let them bully you into giving up." The lawsuit dragged on for months. Discovery, depositions, motions, and counter-motions. The HOA deposed me for 6 hours, asking about every aspect of my business. They brought in their own zoning expert who claimed that commercial properties shouldn't be allowed in residential neighborhoods, regardless of when they were zoned. Martin brought in his own expert who testified that grandfathered commercial properties were common and protected by law. Meanwhile, life at the business got harder. The HOA started filing complaints with the town about everything. Noise complaints at 7 in the morning when my truck started. Parking complaints when customers left their cars on the street. One woman, Denise something, claimed that diesel fumes from my trucks triggered her asthma and demanded I stop operating before 6 p.m. The police got tired of responding to bogus complaints. Officer Mike Taylor, who'd gone to high school with me, pulled me aside one day after responding to yet another noise complaint. "Look, Yannick, I know what they're doing," he said. "These complaints are harassment, plain and simple, but I still have to respond when someone calls. Just keep doing what you're doing and try not to let them get to you. Easy for you to say. You're not the one dealing with lawyers and lawsuits." True. But for what it's worth, most people in town are on your side. Your grandfather was respected. You do good work. The HOA people are newcomers who moved here and want to change everything to suit themselves. That made me feel a bit better, but it didn't solve my problems. The breaking point came on a cold morning in January. I arrived at the shop at 6:30 to find that someone had spray painted "Shut IT Down" across my garage doors in red paint. They'd also slashed the tires on two of my work vans and poured sugar in the gas tanks of two others. I called the police immediately. This time it wasn't Mike who responded, but his sergeant, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa Grant. "This is vandalism and destruction of property," she said, taking photos of everything. "Do you have security cameras?" "I do now. I installed them last month because of all the harassment." "Let's see the footage." We went into my office and pulled up the security system. At 2:15 in the morning, a figure in dark clothes and a ski mask appeared on camera. They spray-painted the doors, then went to work on the vans. The video was clear enough to see what they were doing, but not clear enough to identify who it was. "I need copies of this footage," Sergeant Grant said. "We'll open a criminal investigation. Do you have any idea who might have done this? The HOA has been making my life hell for months." "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence that someone from the HOA did this?" "No, but who else would want to shut down my business? We'll investigate. In the meantime, file an insurance claim for the damage, and you might want to upgrade those cameras." "The vandalism cost me $8,000 in repairs and lost business. Insurance covered most of it, but I had to pay a $2,000 deductible. More importantly, it meant I couldn't send out half my crews for 3 days while we got the vans fixed." Tony was furious. "We should stake out the place," he said. "Catch these people in the act. And then what? Get arrested for assault when we confront them." "No, let the police handle it." But the police didn't find anything. The vandal had been careful not to leave fingerprints or any other evidence. The investigation went nowhere. The lawsuit finally went to trial in June, almost a year after Sharon first showed up at my shop. The trial lasted 3 days. The HOA's lawyer argued that my business was a nuisance, that it didn't fit the character of the neighborhood, and that the town should be compelled to revoke my commercial zoning. They brought in neighbors who complained about noise, traffic, and smells. They brought in a real estate appraiser who claimed property values had dropped 15% since I'd taken over the business. Martin dismantled their case piece by piece. He brought in neighbors who supported my business, including Mrs. Patterson, who testified that I'd fixed her furnace for free when she couldn't afford the repair. He brought in business owners from other parts of town who had similar grandfathered commercial properties. He brought in our own appraiser who testified that property values in the neighborhood had actually increased over the past 3 years, not decreased. The judge, Samuel Harrison, was a veteran of property disputes. He'd been on the bench for 20 years and had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. On the 4th day, he delivered his ruling. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case. The facts are straightforward. Mr. Quinlan operates a legal business on a property that has been commercially zoned since 1982. His business license is valid. He's in compliance with all applicable regulations. The Meadowbrook Heights HOA was not formed until 2023, more than 40 years after the property was commercially zoned." He looked at Sharon and the HOA's lawyer. "HOA covenants are contracts between property owners. They're enforceable within the scope of properties that voluntarily join the HOA. However, they cannot override existing commercial zoning, nor can they compel someone to join an HOA retroactively. Mr. Quinlan never signed any agreement to join your HOA. His property was commercially zoned before your HOA existed. Your covenants do not apply to him." Sharon started to stand up, but the judge held up his hand. "I'm not finished. As for the damages claim, I find it entirely without merit. The HOA has failed to prove that Mr. Quinlan's business caused any diminished property values. In fact, the evidence suggests property values have increased. This lawsuit appears to be nothing more than an attempt to harass Mr. Quinlan into closing his business. The case is dismissed with prejudice. The HOA is ordered to pay Mr. Quinlan's legal fees. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order prohibiting the HOA from filing any further legal actions against Mr. Quinlan regarding his business operations without first obtaining leave from this court. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Martin shook my hand and congratulated me. Across the courtroom, Sharon and the other HOA board members looked stunned, but the judge wasn't done. There's one more matter I want to address. The court has reviewed the police report regarding vandalism at Mr. Quinlan's property. While the police investigation did not identify a suspect, I find the timing suspicious. The vandalism occurred during the pendency of this lawsuit. If anyone associated with the HOA was responsible for that vandalism, you should know that this court takes such matters very seriously. I'm ordering a copy of this ruling to be sent to the prosecutor's office for review. As we left the courtroom, Robert Chen, the HOA's lawyer, pulled Martin aside. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Martin looked angry. When Chen walked away, Martin turned to me. He had the nerve to ask if you'd be willing to settle, even after the judge dismissed the case. Settle what? They lost. Exactly. Some people just can't accept defeat. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks after the trial, I got a call from Sergeant Grant. "Mr. Quinlan, can you come down to the station? We need to talk to you about the vandalism case." My stomach dropped. "Did you find who did it?" "Just come down. I'll explain everything." When I arrived at the police station, Sergeant Grant led me to a small conference room. Sitting there was a young guy, maybe 22 or 23, looking miserable. "Mr. Quinlan, this is Tyler Butterfield. He has something to tell you." I looked at the kid more closely. The last name clicked. "You're related to Sharon Butterfield, her son," Tyler said quietly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Quinlan. My mom, she got me all worked up about how your business was ruining the neighborhood. She said you were violating community standards and that someone needed to do something. She didn't tell me to vandalize your property, not directly, but she kept going on and on about how you needed to be stopped. So you decided to destroy my property. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking straight. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't make it right." Sergeant Grant pulled out a file. "Tyler came in yesterday and confessed. He said his conscience was eating him up. We matched paint samples from his garage to the paint on your doors. We also found receipts for the spray paint purchased the day before the vandalism." "What happens now?" I asked. "That's partly up to you. The prosecutor is filing charges regardless. Vandalism, destruction of property, possibly hate crime enhancements because this appears to be retaliation. Tyler is looking at serious penalties. But if you want to pursue a civil case for damages, that's your right." I looked at Tyler. He was just a kid who'd been manipulated by his mother. I was angry, but I also felt a little sorry for him. "I want restitution for the damages," I said. "The full $8,000, and I want him to do community service, but I'm not going to sue him beyond that." "That's very generous of you," Sergeant Grant said. "What about Sharon? She put him up to this." "That's trickier. Unless Tyler testifies that she directly told him to vandalize your property, we can't charge her with anything, and even then it would be hard to prove." "She won't get away with this," I said. The news of Tyler's arrest spread quickly through the neighborhood. Several HOA members came to my shop to apologize, saying they'd had no idea things had gotten so out of hand. Some resigned from the HOA in protest. A week later, there was an emergency HOA meeting to discuss Sharon's leadership. I wasn't a member, so I couldn't attend, but Tony's wife Janet was, and she filled me in. It was brutal, Janet said. People were screaming at Sharon, calling her vindictive, saying she'd embarrassed the whole neighborhood. Someone brought up that the HOA's legal fees from the lawsuit were over $200,000, and now the judge had ordered them to pay your legal fees too. How much were our fees? I asked. Martin said around $90,000. The HOA members are furious because it's coming out of their HOA dues. A bunch of people are threatening to sue Sharon personally for exceeding her authority. Good. She brought this on herself. She resigned. Douglas Pritchard is taking over as president. He wants to meet with you to apologize formally and to make sure there are no more problems. Douglas came by the shop the next day. He looked exhausted. Mr. Quinlan, I owe you an apology, he said. I went along with Sharon because I believed we were doing the right thing for the neighborhood. I was wrong. Your business is legal. It's been here longer than most of the houses in the area, and you have every right to operate it. I'm sorry for the trouble we've caused. Are you going to stop filing complaints? Absolutely. I'm sending a letter to all HOA members making it clear that your business is not subject to our covenants, and that anyone who harasses you will be expelled from the association. I'm also going to recommend we amend our bylaws to specifically exempt pre-existing commercial properties from our rules. I appreciate that. There's one more thing. Some of the HOA members want to hire you to service their heating and cooling systems. Would you be interested in that work? I almost laughed. After everything they'd put me through, they wanted to hire me, but business was business. Sure. I'll give them the neighbor discount. Over the next few months, things slowly returned to normal. Tyler Butterfield pled guilty to vandalism and destruction of property. He was sentenced to 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and ordered to pay me $8,000 in restitution. The judge also ordered him to attend anger management classes. Sharon Butterfield moved away. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she and her husband had divorced, and she'd relocated to North Carolina. Good riddance. The HOA under Douglas's leadership was completely different. They stopped filing frivolous complaints. They even invited me to their summer block party, though I didn't go. I wasn't quite ready to socialize with people who'd spent a year trying to destroy my livelihood. Martin Jenkins sent me the final bill for his services. Even with the HOA paying the bulk of it, I still owed him $15,000. It was worth every penny. You did good work, he said when I dropped off the check. A lot of people would have given up and moved their business somewhere else. This was my grandfather's business. I wasn't going to let them take it from me. Your grandfather would be proud. The zoning board's confirmation that my commercial license predated the HOA's rules became important precedent for other business owners in town. 3 other people with grandfathered commercial properties reached out to me for advice when their HOAs tried similar tactics. I referred them all to Martin. On the 1-year anniversary of the zoning board hearing, I was in the shop working on a complicated furnace repair when Mrs. Patterson stopped by with a homemade apple pie. I wanted to thank you again for standing up to that horrible woman, she said. My late husband always said your grandfather was the most honest businessman he'd ever met. You're just like him. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That means a lot. This neighborhood needs businesses like yours. Real people doing honest work. Don't let anyone tell you different. After she left, I sat in my office eating pie and thinking about everything that had happened. The harassment, the lawsuits, the vandalism. It had been the hardest year of my life, but I'd survived it. More than that, I'd won. Tony poked his head into the office. Got a call from a new customer on Sycamore Street. Their air conditioning is out and they want us to come take a look. Sycamore Street. That's right in the heart of the HOA area. I know, times have changed, Tony grinned. Word must be getting around that we're good at what we do. Let's go take care of them then. As I grabbed my tools and headed out to the van, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The battle was over. The business was secure. My grandfather's legacy was protected. And the HOA. They'd learned an expensive lesson about trying to override legal commercial zoning with their covenants. I climbed into the van, started the engine, and headed to Sycamore Street. Just another day in the heating and cooling business. Just the way it should be. The months that followed brought an unexpected development. Douglas Pritchard proved to be a reasonable guy, and under his leadership, the HOA actually started doing positive things for the neighborhood. They organized community cleanups, planted trees along the main streets, and established a neighborhood watch program that actually reduced crime. One afternoon in September, Douglas stopped by the shop again. This time he had a proposal. Yannick, some of us on the board have been talking. We caused you a lot of trouble last year. We'd like to make it up to you. You already apologized. We're good. No, I mean really make it up to you. We want to hire your company as the preferred service provider for all HOA members. We'd put your business card in our welcome packets for new residents, list you on our website, and recommend you to anyone who needs heating or cooling work. We'd also like to set up a group maintenance plan where you do annual inspections for HOA members at a discounted rate. I had to admit it was a good offer. The HOA had over 200 members. Even if only half of them signed up for annual maintenance, that would be a steady stream of income. What's the catch? No catch. We pay standard rates. You provide good service, which you already do. And we rebuild the relationship between the HOA and your business. Let me think about it. I discussed it with Tony that evening. He was skeptical at first but came around when I explained the numbers. That's a lot of guaranteed work, he said. We might need to hire another technician. I was thinking the same thing. You know anyone looking for work? Actually, my nephew just finished his HVAC certification. He's looking for an apprenticeship. Have him come by tomorrow. Tony's nephew, Marco, turned out to be a hard worker with a good attitude. I hired him on a trial basis, and within a month, he was handling service calls on his own. I accepted Douglas's proposal. The HOA partnership worked out better than I expected. The HOA members turned out to be good customers. They paid on time, they referred their friends, and nobody complained about noise or diesel fumes anymore. In November, I got a letter from the state licensing board. They were doing a review of long-standing commercial properties in residential areas and wanted to confirm my business's compliance with current regulations. I sent them copies of all my licenses, permits, and the court ruling from Judge Harrison. 2 weeks later, I received a letter of commendation recognizing Quinlan Heating and Cooling as one of Connecticut's longest-running family businesses. I framed the letter and hung it in my office next to a photo of my grandfather standing in front of the original shop. The holiday season brought another surprise. The local newspaper, the Fairfield Sentinel, ran a story about my battle with the HOA. The reporter, a woman named Jennifer Cole, had heard about the case and thought it would make an interesting human interest piece. "Small business owner fights HOA and wins," the headline read. The article laid out the whole saga: Sharon's harassment, the zoning board hearing, the lawsuit, even Tyler's vandalism arrest. Jennifer had interviewed Judge Harrison, who gave a quote about the importance of protecting grandfathered commercial properties. "These businesses are part of our community's history," the judge said in the article. "We can't allow them to be bulldozed by HOA overreach." The article got picked up by a regional business magazine and then by a national news website. Suddenly, I was getting calls from business owners all over the country who were facing similar HOA disputes. I couldn't help them all, but I referred them to Martin and shared my story. One call stood out. It was from a woman named Victoria Hayes in Colorado who ran a dog grooming business from her property. Her HOA was trying to shut her down using the same tactics Sharon had used on me. "Your story gave me hope," Victoria said. "I was about to give up, but then I read about how you fought back and won. I'm going to fight too." "Get a good lawyer," I advised. "Document everything, and don't let them intimidate you." "Thank you. Really. Just knowing someone else went through this and came out okay, it helps." After we hung up, I realized that something good had come out of all the trouble. My story was helping other people stand up for their rights. In January, almost exactly a year after the vandalism, Tyler Butterfield showed up at my shop. He'd completed his community service hours and wanted to apologize again in person. "Mr. Quinlan, I know I already said I'm sorry, but I wanted you to know that I've really learned from this. I was stupid and let my mom manipulate me into doing something terrible. I'm working on being a better person." "I appreciate you saying that, Tyler. What are you doing now?" "I'm going to community college, studying business administration. I'm also working part-time at Home Depot, trying to get my life together." "Good for you. Keep at it. Can I ask you something? How did you not hate me after what I did?" I thought about it for a moment. "Because you're not the real villain in this story. Your mother is. She filled your head with lies and then watched while you destroyed yourself trying to please her. You were a victim too, in a way." Tyler's eyes got watery. "Thank you for saying that. I've been carrying around so much guilt." "Use that guilt to motivate you to be better. That's the best thing you can do." After he left, Tony came over. "That took a lot of class, boss. I don't know if I could have been that understanding." "He's just a kid who made a mistake. Everyone deserves a second chance." Spring brought new challenges, but good ones this time. Business was booming. Between the HOA partnership and the publicity from the newspaper article, I had more work than I could handle. I hired 2 more technicians and bought another van. Mrs. Patterson's furnace finally gave up the ghost in March. It was 30 years old and had been on its last legs for a while. I gave her a good deal on a new high-efficiency model and threw in a programmable thermostat for free. "You didn't have to do that," she protested. "Yes, I did. You stood up for me when I needed it. This is my way of saying thank you." In April, the HOA held elections for the board. Douglas ran for re-election as president and won easily. In his victory speech at the annual meeting, which Janet attended and reported back to me, he talked about the lessons learned from the previous year. "We made serious mistakes under the previous administration," Douglas said. "We let our desire for uniformity override common sense and basic fairness. We targeted a good businessman who was operating legally and caused unnecessary conflict. I promise that under my leadership, we'll focus on bringing the community together, not tearing it apart." The members gave him a standing ovation. In June, Martin Jenkins called with news. "Remember Sharon Butterfield? How could I forget? She's being sued by her old HOA in North Carolina. Apparently, she joined their board and started the same kind of harassment campaign against a small bakery. But the bakery owner did his homework and found out about what happened here. He's using our case as precedent." I couldn't help but laugh. Some people never learn. "The prosecutor in the North Carolina case wants to talk to you. They're building a pattern of behavior case. Would you be willing to testify if it goes to trial?" "Absolutely." The North Carolina case never went to trial. Sharon settled and agreed to resign from the HOA board permanently, but it was satisfying to know that her behavior had finally caught up with her. As summer arrived, I took a rare day off and drove up to the cemetery where my grandfather was buried. I hadn't been there since the funeral 3 years earlier. The guilt of being too busy hit me as I stood in front of his headstone. "Hey, Grandpa," I said, feeling a little foolish talking to a grave marker. "I know I haven't visited in a while. Things have been crazy, but I wanted to tell you that the business is doing great. Better than great, actually. I had to fight like hell to keep it, but I won. The zoning board confirmed that your commercial license predates all the HOA nonsense. Judge Harrison backed us up. I think you would have been proud of how we handled it." The wind rustled through the trees. I like to think it was my grandfather's way of responding. I hired 3 new guys. Tony's still with me. He was a huge help through everything. I'm thinking about expanding, maybe opening a second location. Nothing big, just somewhere we can stock more parts and maybe add on some additional services. What do you think? A bird landed on the headstone and chirped before flying away. "I'll take that as approval. Miss you, Grandpa. I'll try to visit more often." On the drive back, I thought about how much had changed in just 2 years. The nightmare with Sharon and the HOA, the stress of the lawsuits, the vandalism. It had all seemed overwhelming at the time, but I'd gotten through it. The business was stronger than ever, and I'd learned valuable lessons about standing up for myself and not letting bullies push me around. I also thought about all the people who had helped me along the way. Martin with his legal expertise, Tony with his loyalty and support, Mrs. Patterson and the other neighbors who testified on my behalf, even Judge Harrison and the zoning board members who recognized that the law was on my side. It reminded me that while there are people like Sharon in the world who try to tear others down, there are far more people who are willing to help and support you if you're in the right. By July, I'd hired a business consultant to help me plan the expansion. Her name was Rachel Wung, and she specialized in helping small businesses grow sustainably. "You've got a solid foundation," Rachel said after reviewing my books. "Strong customer base, good reputation, healthy cash flow. You're in a great position to expand. What would you recommend?" "I'd start with a second location on the other side of town, somewhere with good highway access for your trucks. You could move your parts inventory there and free up space at your current location for more service bays. You might also consider diversifying your services. Maybe add plumbing or electrical work. That's ambitious. You've proven you can handle adversity. Expansion should be easy by comparison." I liked Rachel's optimism. Over the next few months, we worked together to develop a 5-year growth plan. The goal was to double the business size while maintaining the quality service that had made Quinlan Heating and Cooling successful. In September, I found the perfect location for the second shop, an old warehouse on Route 1 that had great access to both I-95 and the Merritt Parkway. The rent was reasonable, and the space was big enough for what I needed. I signed a lease and spent October setting it up. The grand opening of Quinlan Heating and Cooling North was in November, almost exactly 2 years after the zoning board hearing that had started it all. I invited the whole town, including the current HOA board. Douglas and several other board members showed up and congratulated me. "You've come a long way," Douglas said, looking around at the new facility. "This is impressive." "I couldn't have done it without the HOA partnership," I admitted. That steady stream of maintenance contracts gave me the financial stability to take this risk. I'm glad something good came out of that whole mess. The local news covered the grand opening. Jennifer Cole from the Sentinel wrote another article, this one titled, "From HOA Battle to Business Expansion. Quinlan Heating Doubles Down on Success." By December, both locations were running smoothly. I'd hired a manager for the north location, a woman named Sarah Mitchell who had 20 years of experience in the HVAC industry. This freed me up to focus on the bigger picture: strategy, marketing, and business development. On Christmas Eve, I was closing up the original shop when Tony stopped by. He had a wrapped present in his hands. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." I tore off the wrapping paper to find a framed photograph. It showed my grandfather's shop from 1987, the day he first opened for business. My grandfather stood in front, young and proud. Next to that photo was a recent picture of me standing in front of the same building, with the Quinlan heating and cooling sign visible behind me. "Where did you get the old photo?" "Your grandfather gave it to me years ago. I always meant to give it to you, but I wanted to wait for the right time. After everything you went through this past couple years, standing up to the HOA and fighting for this place, I figured now was the right time." "Tony, this is incredible. Thank you. Your grandfather would be proud of you, Yannick. I know I am." We shook hands, and for a moment, I felt a deep connection to the past and hope for the future. The years that followed brought continued success. The North Carolina bakery owner that Sharon had harassed, inspired by my story, won his case and sent me a thank you note along with a box of his best pastries. Victoria Hayes in Colorado called to tell me she'd won her fight too. Several other business owners reached out with similar stories of victory. The HOA continued to be a good partner. Douglas served 3 terms as president before stepping down, and his successor, a retired teacher named Margaret Sullivan, maintained the same reasonable approach. The neighborhood thrived, and nobody complained about commercial properties anymore. Tyler Butterfield finished his associate degree and went on to a 4-year university. He sent me a graduation announcement with a note thanking me for giving him a second chance and not holding his mistake against him forever. In the 5th year after the zoning board hearing, the state of Connecticut recognized Quinlan Heating and Cooling as Small Business of the Year. The award ceremony was held in Hartford, and I brought Tony, Marco, and my entire staff. The governor herself presented the award and mentioned my fight with the HOA as an example of perseverance and dedication. "Mr. Quinlan could have given up when faced with harassment and frivolous lawsuits," the governor said. "Instead, he stood his ground, trusted in the legal system, and proved that small businesses have rights that must be respected." His victory set an important precedent for property rights across our state. Standing on that stage, holding the award, I thought about the day Sharon Butterfield first walked into my shop with her cease and desist letter. If someone had told me then that I'd end up here, I never would have believed them. But that's the thing about fighting for what's right. You never know where it will lead you. Sometimes you just have to trust that if you stand firm in the face of injustice, things will work out. As I drove home that night, the Small Business of the Year award sitting on the passenger seat, I passed by the original shop on Meadowbrook Drive. The lights were off, but the sign still glowed in the dark. Quinlan Heating and Cooling, serving Fairfield County since 1987. 40 years of business. 2 generations of Quinlans. And now a legacy that would continue for years to come, protected by the zoning laws that predated any HOA rules, confirmed by the zoning board, upheld by the courts, and strengthened by the community that had rallied behind me. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, reflecting on everything. The harassment, the lawsuits, the vandalism, it had all been worth it. Not just because I won, but because I'd proven that small business owners don't have to roll over when faced with HOA overreach. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin Jenkins. "Congratulations on the award. Your grandfather would be incredibly proud." I texted back, "Thanks for everything, Martin. Couldn't have done it without you." As I walked into my house, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The battle with the HOA was long over, but the lessons remained. Stand up for what's right. Trust in the legal system when you're on solid ground. Don't let bullies intimidate you. And most importantly, remember that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. Quinlan Heating and Cooling wasn't just a business. It was my grandfather's legacy, my livelihood, and a symbol of what's possible when you refuse to give up. The zoning board had confirmed that my commercial license predated the HOA's rules, and that confirmation had opened doors I never imagined. I set the award on my mantle and looked at the framed photo Tony had given me years earlier. 2 generations, same building, same commitment to quality and service. "We did it, Grandpa," I said softly. "We protected what you built." And in that moment, I knew that no HOA, no matter how determined, could ever take that away.